American exceptionalism. Some people believe it, some people don't. But what does American exceptionalism mean? The goal of my journey is to get past the buzzword and explore, what does American exceptionalism really mean? I'm Janine Turner. Join me as I speak with scholars and Americans all across the United States about what American exceptionalism means to them, both historically and currently. American exceptionalism, how and why it matters.
The shot heard around the world. It wasn't just the beginning of a truly revolutionary war. It was the beginning of a truly revolutionary form of liberty, a revolutionary way of thinking, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it all began in Lexington, Massachusetts. That skirmish, that first skirmish, was the shot heard around the world. Why? Because this shot represented a new American philosophical freedom, which, once proven victorious, lit a flame for freedom that spread across the entire globe. But what is this legendary story of the Battle of Lexington? What really happened there? My guest today is Sabrina Bhattacharjya. She is truly exceptional. She's a 14-year-old passionate historian, entrepreneur, and fashion designer. She's created a website, Lexington 250, to inspire her contemporaries and all Americans to celebrate the upcoming 250th anniversary of this momentous, courageous event at Lexington, Massachusetts. Sabrina.
Yes.
I am so thrilled to meet you. You are truly exceptional.
You are too.
If we're talking about American exceptionalism, you are an exceptional American.
You are too. Constituting America is awesome.
Thank you very much. I am in awe of what you are, the purpose that you have found for your life, the actions that you are taking to be of service, the website that you have created, where I kept calling my coach here, saying, "Are you sure she did this? It's so amazing. Are you sure an adult didn't do this?" You are exceptional in your mission, your drive, your spirit, your light. I can see your light. So I'm thrilled to be able to speak with you today.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to speak with you too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Okay, so I guess let's start with where you're from.
Yeah, I'm from Lexington, Massachusetts.
There you go. And we drove there yesterday to visit. Tova and I did, and who's the National Youth Director for Constituting America. And we drove, and it was exceptional. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with Lexington history mainly with the reenactment. And so when I was 6 years old, I discovered Hamilton because Hamilton came out, and I was obsessed, absolutely obsessed. And I memorized all 20,000 words. I loved it. And then there's a show called Liberty's Kids, and it came out in 1999. It has a crazy cast of Walter Cronkite, other people. He's a main character, and Liberty's Kids. And then I saw the Battle of Lexington, and I'm like, hey, Lexington, that, is that my Lexington? And then I saw a later episode with Alexander Hamilton, and I'm like, wait, it's all connected? And that's how I kind of fell in love with history and connected it back to Lexington.
I love history too. In Fort Worth, was Euless, Texas, the smallest town on the planet, right? In Texas in 1965. I mean, but when I was reading, when I would go to the bottom, I remember going to the bottom of the shelf, and I would grab the biographies. I just loved history. I wanted to learn, and I remember reading about Betsy Ross and Abigail Adams, and it's still to this day, if you look at my reading list, it's Napoleon or Hamilton or whatever. I just love to read biographies and history because we believe at Constituting America that history holds the key to the future. It's the more that you know about history, the more it teaches us about today and the future. Really is important. So you live in Lexington.
I do.
You've been to the reenactments, I take it.
I have been going since I was 6 years old, and pretty much we haven't skipped a year unless for COVID, whereas my dad and I, so we live right off the bike path, and what we would do is we would ride our bikes. The reenactment's also at 5 a.m., which is something people forget. And so we'd wake up, and then we'd ride our bikes to where Paul Revere would ride, and we'd go down the same road and yell, "The British are coming" at 5 a.m. So that's what we did the that when they didn't have the reenactment. But otherwise, we've seen the reenactment every year. And
Okay, so let's break that down. Okay, so Lexington
yes.
is Paul. We all know about Paul Revere. The British are coming, or whatever he said.
So the regulars are out. He had a couple phrases.
Yeah.
Regulars are out, the lobster backs are out, or the redcoats are out.
So he never actually said the British are coming.
No, that'd be confusing because we also considered ourselves British.
Oh.
So if we were considered British and the British coming, who's coming? What? We're British. Wait, what? Like that would just be.
So he said the redcoats are coming.
The redcoats are out. The redcoats are coming. The more common phrase that we hear is like not really, but like the regulars are out.
Oh, the regulars are out. Okay.
Like the regulars are out. The regulars are out.
And that when he took his famous ride, was it to Lexington?
It was to Lexington. So the story is that it all starts with Joseph Warren at 8:00, and he catches wind that the redcoats are coming to Lexington.
On what day?
On April 18th, 1775. And so he calls up his two friends, Paul Revere and William Dawes. And Paul Revere, so the story is, he is the one who said, "One if I land, two if I see." So the one if I land was actually Revere, and he was going to go off his horse. And then the two if I land, two if I see was Dawes. And so Dawes actually, I row. So Dawes was a rower, and he essentially rowed his boat to Lexington as far as he could, and then met his friend on a horse and went to Lexington. And then Paul Revere went to Lexington. So they met up at the Hancock Clark House, where John Hancock and Samuel Adams were staying that night, along with, that was the Reverend's house, Jonas Clark. And so William Dawes got there half an hour later, and they did the same exact job. And they met people along the way, like Samuel Prescott, who was a part of a very esteemed family in Concord. And so they all kind of spread the word that the regulars were out. So the main idea was that the reason they weren't trying to cause a battle, they were just trying to get to Hancock and Adams, and then they're trying to do a 2-in-1. They're trying to get to Hancock and Adams, and then try to get arms in Concord. So together, they kind of were like, it's great, it's on the way. But no. And then we heard of it, and then we thought they were coming, and then, yeah.
Okay, so why were Hancock and Samuel Adams, which was a cousin of John Adams, our second president, why were Samuel Adams and John Hancock there in Lexington?
They were there because the Continental Congress was there. And actually, it was I believe the Continental Congress was in Concord at the time, or possibly Burlington. But, yeah, so something that I think is really crazy is that Paul Revere came multiple times to the house, like, days before, like, 3 months before, 2 months before, a week before, and then he was like, at midnight, he was like, guys, you actually have to go. Like, this is not going to cut it.
On the 18th.
On the 18th.
On the 19th.
Yes.
And were they in that yellow house that we saw? Is that where the tavern there?
No, that's Buckman Tavern. So that's where the Lexington Militia was. If you go half a mile down the road, you would see a yellow house, very similar paint color, and it's a bit longer. It looks more like a house. And that's where they were staying.
So that's where Samuel Adams and John Hancock were. Yes. And so, one if by land, two if by sea. That means how they were getting to Lexington.
Yes. So in the older church, Joseph Warren was to hang up lanterns. So if you saw one lantern, you'd know they're coming by land.
The British are coming by land. Yes. Okay.
And then actually John Hancock grew up in that house because it was his grandparents' house. And the Reverend Jonas Clark, his wife, was John Hancock's cousin. So he knew the house very well. He kind of knew it was like a safe space because everyone was trying to get to the Continental Congress. So rather than paying a fortune in Concord and staying in Concord, he's like, yeah, I'd stay at my grandparents' house with my cousin.
Okay, so one if by land meant the British were coming by land, two meant they were coming by sea.
Yes.
All right, but did it also mean how Dawes was coming by boat? And there seems to
not
be a
really, but
there.
it was because you didn't want to get captured, right? Mm-hmm. So if Dawes, if you saw one lantern, one if by land, you knew that Dawes had to row quicker, and you knew that, and then if you saw two if by sea, which it was that night, Revere had to ride.
And where was this lantern being?
In the Old North Church. Right here in Boston.
In Boston?
Yes.
Okay, so it was alerting whom 1 by 2? It was alerting...
Revere and Dawes, that's it.
Okay, so it was a signal to them.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I should know all this. But see, that's why I have you here. To teach me all the details. So 1 if by land, 2 if by sea were for Dawes and Revere.
Oh, interesting. So that's how the British were coming.
Yes.
And so they both traversed to Lexington.
And then Dawes only got there like 10, 15 minutes later than Revere, but that's not why you know Paul Revere's name. It's because in 1861, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he wrote a poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. It's only because Revere's name sounded better. And also, Paul Revere was a little bit of a PR man. He told his story and kind of made it much fancier and like much more bold. He was a very good storyteller. He was also 20 years older. He like knew everyone. He was kind of the town mayor of sorts and like starting the revolution. So yeah.
Ah, so Revere got his name out there.
He got his name out there.
He knew how to social media.
He knew how to go viral.
What is it called when you're a social media? He was an influencer.
Yes. He was influencing everyone with the silversmith, you know.
That's right. Okay, fascinating. Well, now I know. So what river? Are they going up the
Charles
River?
Charles.
Okay, so the Charles River, for those who don't know Boston, or the area, the Charles River goes all the way it goes through Boston.
It goes through Boston towards the neighboring town of Watertown and Newton, and it kind of goes in opposite direction of Lexington. So, and then they're about 6 to 7 miles up the river, so towards the Old North Church. So he had to row that like 6 miles or so, and then someone met him with his horse.
Oh, okay.
And then he went to
Lexington.
Lexington.
And they both ended up in Lexington.
Yes.
And so you're a rower.
I am.
Yes. And so was he rowing by himself?
He was rowing by himself. And the thing that was interesting is that he actually had to like muffle the oars because that's how it worked.
Yeah.
They had to like put cloth over the oars so that way the British couldn't hear them. And also Paul Revere wasn't actually yelling the redcoats are out. He was going up. He had to like knock on people's doors. He like he knew where all the important people lived. Mm-hmm. So he was like talking to Dawes was the express route, just trying to get Hancock and Adams. Whereas he was kind of like, hey, Colonel Buttrick, like we gotta go.
They knew it was coming. Wow, fascinating. And so the British came via boat? Or did they come? Yeah,
they just started walking.
They walked?
Yes.
Okay, so they didn't come by boat?
They did not come by sea.
They did not, okay, the river, yeah. Okay, so interesting. Fascinating. So now this was all on April 18th, 1775.
And this is around midnight or so.
Midnight. Okay, and so they're knocking on everybody's door saying the redcoats the regulars.
Yes.
Are coming.
Really, any of them. Yeah. Like, it's kind of
Lobsterbacks.
Lobsterbacks, redcoats, regulars, all of them.
Okay, so alerting everyone. Because they had munitions and whatnot.
Yes, in Concord. Lexington was just because Hancock and Adams were the ones who were mainly funding the revolution at the time. Therefore, that's why the British wanted to capture them. So
Hancock and Adams were funding the revolution?
Yes.
Interesting. So what did they do on that night? Was the bell ringing yet? Because we saw the bell.
Not yet. So we're about like 12:30 a.m. or so. So Hancock and Adams they run away. They left. They were like, okay, yeah, we'll go. We'll go to we'll get out of here. We'll skedaddle. And then the Lexington militia was in Buckman Tavern at the time. So they kind of just waited out the night, and then once they heard the redcoats because it's just Mass Ave is the road that they were marching on. Mm-hmm. It's just a very long road from Boston all the way to Concord. Wow. So they just kind of marched on that road. So as soon as they heard them coming on Mass Ave, it was like, okay, yeah. They were prepared. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Okay, I want to just get through the story, then I'm going to go back and talk about it. Yeah. Because you and I both love history so much. Yeah. And I was actually at Harper's Ferry. Have you been there? I have not. Harper's Ferry is really fascinating. It's outside of Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. It's in kind of West Virginia. But it's where they had the Revolution skirmishes there, but they also had Civil War skirmishes there. And when I was there, I could just feel the energy. And I wrote a poem about it, right? So I love to absorb the energy and kind of pick, and I'm an actress too, right? So it's like I want to feel how everything was happening. Okay, so now we're at the 18th. Yes. Dawes and Paul Revere have arrived. Yes. Hancock and Adams have left. Now, this is when John Parker steps forth and so many of the... Somewhat. So we're going to... The Minutemen. Actually, this is a common misconception. Okay. But Lexington didn't have Minutemen. Lexington had militiamen. So, yeah, the Lexington... What's the difference? Minutemen.
Look at you. You know, I'm not kidding. There's no way I can stump you.
They were different ranks.
Okay.
Minutemen had to be, literally had to be able to get ready in a minute, whereas militiamen just had to be able to, have a gun on them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, great. So in Lexington, they were?
Militiamen.
So,
yeah. So at 4:30 or so, so John Hancock had a trunk, which is now at the Worcester Museum, with all of his important documents. So they scattered all the documents. We've never found the documents. We don't know what.
No way.
But we do have the trunk. Mm-hmm. It's not at the Lexington Historical Society. But they hid the trunk. They buried the trunk. And you can see at the reenactment, maybe 10 to 15 minutes before, they, bring out the trunk and, take it across the green, too.
Wow. Oh, they do. They take they take it across the green to go hide it.
Yes.
All right. So that's happening with the militiamen.
Okay.
And so then what?
So the Redcoats are just going on their steady way. They're marching in unison, Mm-hmm. And there's 600 of them, 800.
Wow.
And there's 80 Lexington militiamen.
Wow.
So they are most definitely outnumbered, outmanned.
Yes.
And yeah, so in Lexington, then something happens. Someone fires. And then
Because they arrive.
They assemble on the green. Everyone assembles.
And that's where the John Parker stone is. You want to say the quote for us? Let it begin.
Stand your ground, men. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
Okay, I want you to say that again because I stepped on you, right?
Okay.
So John Parker. Tell us about him. He was a man of the town.
John Parker was a wheelwright in the town.
A what?
A wheelwright.
What's that?
He created wheels.
Okay.
So he made spinning wheels, wagon wheels, really any type of wheel. And so actually in 1769 with Anna Harrington, I believe, Lexington's always been a revolutionary town, even before 1775. So in 1769, we had the spinning tableau and a spinning protest. So essentially 45 women got together and they spun yarn to protest because they didn't want to buy anything from the British because it was being so heavily taxed on. So he made all those wheels.
So the women were stepping forth. The women started a little
they did
rebellion.
And then John Parker, he kind of stepped up to be the militia leader, and yeah.
Okay, so so that day. When did they arrive? What time did they arrive? Because you said it's at 5 a.m.
This is they kind of arrive on the green about 5:10 or so. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So the British arrived, but there were 80 militiamen there to meet them.
Yes.
And one of them was John Parker, who was sort of the leader, and a lot of his cousins and brothers and family were there.
Yeah.
And so they were standing there, and now I'm not going to talk. I'm going to get, so wait 2 seconds. Tell us the quote again that John Parker said.
Stand your ground, men. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
Great.
And that's engraved on rocks. That's a very Lexingtonian thing. It's a giving what's his name? William Prescott's don't fire unless you see the whites of their eyes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. All
right. So the skirmish happened.
Yes. So
who shot the first shot?
Okay, so there is a little bit of a lore. So there's a lot of stories. So one supposed one that's probably not true is there's a man named Elijah Sanderson. Elijah's part of the Lexington militiamen. He's just sitting in a rocking chair in Buckman Tavern,
which is kind of across the street.
Yes, mm-hmm. It's directly across the street, 50 feet from the battle green. Mm-hmm. And Elijah Sanderson, he falls asleep around 11 or so and wakes up to the British pounding their feet on the gravel road, which he had called home. And then he apparently forgot his musket, but no. He apparently ran upstairs to the attic and fired the first shot. But that's probably not true. Oh, we think it could have happened in a neighboring town. And just it was a really loud firing off a rock. That's an actual thing. Someone fired. We don't know who. Okay. But we do know someone fired, and then everyone was like, "Who fired? Who fired?" And then
you've heard it so many times. They do the accents as an actress, right? I'm sure they all have the accents.
A little bit, not really, but I don't know. Do you know Liberty? I just said Liberty's Kids. That's how they do it in Liberty's Kids.
Oh, okay. Who fired?
Who fired? Who fired? Because it follows actually two journalists who are and they're like teen journalists, and one of them is James and one of them is Sarah, and Sarah's British and her cousin's fighting in the 10th Regiment, which is the British who came to Lexington, and then James is like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of American patriot, and they both use journalism and like lived through the revolution.
Oh, so they took notes and
Yes.
documented it.
Yes.
So nobody knows who fired.
No one knows who fired. This is like one of the greatest secrets of American history. We'll never know who fired. We're hoping to figure it out, but very unlikely. So yeah, we don't know who fired. So bang, 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 pew, 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 pew. And then essentially, there's only 80 men, whereas 600. Wow. They reassemble, and then they get back on the road and march towards Concord. And then by that time, Concord already kind of knew what happened, what in Lexington, so they were getting prepared.
Wow. Okay, so they just sort of shot how many people? 8? How many people died?
8 people died. 7 of them were from Lexington, and one of them was from Woburn, which is a neighboring town.
And there was an African American there too.
Yes,
slave.
there was.
He was a slave at the time.
There were actually 2. So one was Eli Purdue, and then the other one, who's more famous, is Prince Estabrook. And Eli Purdue we only learned about recently as like a community, but because in the textbook, so there's Hudson's history, and yeah, so they actually never mentioned that he was of African American descent. Whereas for Prince Estabrook, it was widely known that he was. So there were actually 2 that day. Neither of them were shot that day, and they both lived on.
But they fought.
They did fight. They're known to be the first African Americans to fight in the American Revolution.
That's really good to know. Yeah, there's that plaque there we saw.
Yeah.
So the British just shot 8 people, and then they marched on.
Yep.
They're like, you're a nuisance.
Yep.
We're moving on. Were they looking around and were they searching the area looking?
They knew that Hancock and Adams had hidden.
Oh, they had a
first.
spy, so they knew they were already gone. Yeah. So they were just you're a nuisance, and we're gonna march on. And then tell the story of there was one soldier who crawled across Minutemen, militiamen, who crawled across to his house to his wife and his wife.
Yeah, so one of them, I believe Jonathan Harrington. I know it's one of the Harringtons. They all have there were only 7 families in Lexington who all have the same name, the same last names and same first names. It's kind of a mix and match deal. And he got shot, and essentially his house is about 75 feet or so away from where the battle happened. So his wife saw it all, and she kind of went outside, and then he crawls his way back to his house and dies at his wife's feet.
Wow. Does she say anything there?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. But that's such a sad story. And so to wrap this up, because I want to talk about so many other things with you, what was the reverberation? I mean, it's considered the shot that was heard around the world. So what happened in that town after they marched on and 8 people were dead? I mean, it just news spread and the war has started? Wasn't there something about that the British were like, whoa, these guys are going to fight us? Weren't the British a bit taken aback? That
they were a little bit, because General Gage was like, sound your arms, don't just disperse. He was very no, put down your arms. He was very controlling that.
Who was that?
General Gage. He was the general for the 10th Regiment, who were the British who were fighting.
Okay, so he didn't really know it. He was like, no one wants trouble here. We just want to be friends. And we're like, yeah, no. And then someone fired. So the thing with someone firing, and that's why we never know, is because if you're directly disobeying Parker's orders if you fired, and you're also directly disobeying Gage's orders if you fired. So no one really wants to come out and say, I fired. Oh, right. They'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
But what was the reverberation that happened? What was it's considered the beginning of our revolution, Lexington and Concord. So why is that?
It was a start. You didn't do anything, nothing. It was just for no reason. Okay, you shot so many men that day, and and they kind of knew, we're not going to take this. And then the revolution, actually, the battles were quite spaced out. I think the next one was Bunker Hill. After that was in June.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, battles were quite spaced out.
Yes. Yeah, they're very different than today. And so, but was there a battle in Concord?
There was a battle in Concord. So essentially it happened on the Old North Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
We like Old North things. And, yeah, so it happened on the Old North Bridge, and they tried to destroy the bridge, but they didn't have time to.
They who?
Being the Concord militiamen.
Okay.
And yeah. So and then similar thing that happened in Lexington, except it happened on a bridge, and then Concord. So essentially Concord was more prepared and they had more people gathered. So when the British were marching back, they started at Miriam's Corner. Someone fired, and then we tried to chase them, and we kind of was like, there were battles like pit stopped along the way, including one of them, which was Parker's Revenge, which happened in Lexington, about maybe a mile or so up the road from where Battle Green is. So they came through, and like they just had different battles throughout the day.
So that's when they learned the colonists are going to fight back.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay. Because were any British killed or just?
There were British killed. In Lexington, only one was shot in the leg, and that's really it. He actually died.
So only one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's buried there, isn't he?
He is buried there, and actually, not really so fun fact is that the doctor in town was named Joseph Fisk, and Joseph Fisk decided, hey, we're gonna treat this guy like he needs help, like it's not okay. Yeah. And the town of Lexington never paid him back for it.
Oh, they didn't pay the doctor who.
They never paid the doctor
who helped the British.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. But he died because
mm-hmm.
There's another monument in Lexington where it's 7 militiamen and 1 British, correct?
No, it's 8 militiamen.
Oh, it's 8 militiamen. Is there a British?
There is no British right there.
Oh, okay.
There's just 7 from Lexington, 1 from Woburn.
Oh, all right. So no British with them.
And actually, fun fact about that monument is that that's the first American monument to American history, which is really cool. And then that hill, it's on a hill, it's called Schoolhouse Hill. So that's where their schoolhouse was. And that's where like all the children would have school and stuff. And yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And
of course.
They're getting ready to have their 250th anniversary.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you and AA. And so that's one of the things you're preparing for. But before we get to that, because next year, 2025 will be 250 years since that monumental American moment. What do you feel is exceptional about that? The American exceptionalism, the whole experience of Lexington. What encapsulates?
I think it's just that it's about the first shot. Like, we don't know who fired, but like whoever did kind of changed the course of the world. And like think about like when we fired, whoever fired, like that like changed so many lives further down the line. Like I think about it because Lexington has a very diverse population. We have a lot of people from all over the world. So like thinking about how that first shot impacted those families so many years later, and like it had them come to the U.S. and allowed so many people to come to the U.S., I just think is so impactful.
So it was the beginning of liberty.
It is known as the birthplace of American liberty.
The birthplace of American liberty. So what do you think was exceptional about the townsmen, the militiamen, the women, the town that was there that stood up for the Redcoats, Paul Revere, Dawes, John Hancock, and what do you think was exceptional about all of them?
A lot of courage. Everyone had so much courage, and they were like, we'll do what it takes.
Because I think people forget, because when I teach students all over the country, they forget that this was the most powerful country in the world, Britain. And we were just this colony. I mean, there were 60 of them and how many were there?
There were 80 of us.
80 and 600. And so this was the most powerful country in the world. So I think courage is,
and then like we forget, like there were no streetlights when Paul Revere and William Dawes rode. There was nothing. Like he didn't have lights on his boat. Like you couldn't, like they had to hold a lantern. They had to like ride out there. And if you got caught, like which Paul Revere did, he did get caught in Concord. And they took his horse, they made him walk back home. So if you got caught, like it's game over.
Yes, the courage. I love that. And so that would be a nice American exceptionalism trait, would be courage, because they didn't know, no one knew they were going to win.
Yeah.
But they were willing to stand up for what they felt was just.
Yeah. And after Lexington, they were like, we're probably not. Like, since it was such a stark battle.
And then Parker went after them. You said there was a Parker's Revenge.
Parker's Revenge is what that battle was named, because essentially then we knew Lexington happened, we knew Concord happened, and when they were marching back through Concord, Lincoln, Lexington, Arlington, all those towns, they just fired.
Was it Parker who actually went? And they got on their horses?
Parker's Revenge?
Uh-huh.
Parker's Revenge, yeah. He essentially, because that was his militiamen kind of getting back on him, because they had more people now.
Right. And I guess that's when the British sort of thought, oh, wait, these guys mean business.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so thank you for recounting the story. Now, you are encouraging as a historian, and what I find so exceptional about you is your enthusiasm and the light in your eyes, and that you're well, it's Patriots Day, and you are a patriot. And so you've built this website about America 250, and you want to encourage other youths in America. The youth, maybe that shouldn't be plural. His youth was like fish, singular fish. But other youth to be also inspired by history. So talk about that a little bit.
So something that I've when you go to Lexington or go to these revolutionary towns, something that I found is that there's something called the Revolutionary Rush. It's that feeling that like, whoa, this place like changed history. Like something happened here that changed everything. And I think that's what I call the Revolutionary Rush. It's kind of like that realization that was like, whoa. So I want more people to understand in Lexington, like what happened in their town. Because I'm recounting this whole entire story, but there are many of my classmates who don't even know the tip of the iceberg about it. And
And so why do you feel knowing that history is important?
History is important because I think in order for us to think about the past, in order for us to move on and think about the future, we have to learn about the past so we can understand our past mistakes.
And the things that were great.
As well.
Right. Yes, that's the way we learn is that history is, I'm also intrigued just with the, what it smelled like. What was it like for them? I used to love the medieval times. My dad's like, oh, they didn't have antibiotics, it smelled. But I mean, it's sort of like what their lives were like. Because I think that as we move into AI and all these crazy things, there was a simplicity to the lives. And how they had to come together in a community to communicate. They couldn't sit in their houses and watch TV or be on their iPhones. They had to go out and have a sense of community. What do you feel? How do you feel about that? The way people came together and actually said, we're going to look after each other in our community. We're going to serve a higher purpose, but we're also going to communicate. We're going to go out and about. They had to go to the tavern. Yeah,
I think that's what a community is, right? And I think we can find these communities online in places like Discord or Instagram. But I think it's a very similar community, but I think there's something different about having that physical presence there.
There's more patience, more acceptance.
Sense of spirit.
Mm-hmm. Sense of spirit, less egocentric. We're all kind of, look at us, But then when you can actually sit down with someone, there's just something that happens.
Yeah.
Sit down interview. So that's fabulous. So interestingly enough, many people in your class and your contemporaries don't even know that happened there, and they drive by it every day.
They do drive by it. I see them drink boba, even though. So actually, a fun fact for you: 3 days before the Boston Tea Party was the Lexington tea burning. Which essentially, so Jonas Clark, the Reverend in town, was like, okay, guys, we're not drinking tea anymore. Like, this is not good. We're not going to do this. So we're going to burn all our tea. And if we see you drinking tea, like, you're done. Like, we're not doing this. So they burned all the tea. And then 3 days later, the Boston Tea Party happened.
Oh, interesting. So they were the first with the tea, too.
We are the first with the tea. Burning the tea since 1773.
We've been burning the tea since 1773. Yes. That rhymes.
It does rhyme.
That's cool. Interesting. Really interesting. Would we do that today? Do you think we would boycott Amazon or things from China? I mean, I don't know. Do you think we have it in us?
I think if we really needed to, we could.
Yeah. I think it was George Washington who said that the interesting challenge with democracy is that you have to feel it before you can really understand it. So right now, any danger we feel is just kind of out there. But when you actually feel it, we would probably, I think we'd come together.
Yeah.
I think we're courageous people.
Yeah.
So you are exceptional. You are an exceptional young woman. what is your goal? What is your focus? You're a designer as well. You did this bracelet for me. Let it begin here. It's funny, we were talking about, that was the plaque I thought was so amazing. I could just visualize him standing there saying it. Did he say that, John Parker?
Yes.
Did he say that in front of the British?
He
said
did.
that to them.
He said it. He said it to his men, but as they were assembling on, so they could have easily heard it.
So let it begin here. So something is beginning with you. You obviously have dreams. What is your beginning? What is your goal?
Well, my goal so I run a website called Lexington250.com, celebrating the Battle of Lexington with the 250th anniversary and ingrained the American Revolution, because it started here, but it goes throughout our whole entire country, and it goes through these 250 years. So my specific goal is to get kids into history, and I think the way we do that is it's so hard to compete with things when it's so hard to compete with like 4-year-olds learning about Skibbity Toilet, and it's so hard to compete with like Minecraft and all these other like video games, like social media trends, like fun, cool new foods, like everything is just so hard to compete with, and I think the only way to do that is to make it one of those things that you're like, oh wait, that's cool.
How do you do that?
How do I do that? So mainly through merch. So one of my favorite things to do is I actually design a ton of my own like historically themed merch with things that say like spill the tea on the king, which is like spilling the tea is like giving the gossip, but also spilling the tea is in like the Boston Tea Party. But then also the revolution will not be televised on the front, and then on the back it says because it's 1775, which is a reference to the song by Gil Scott-Heron about the civil rights movement. So there's a lot of just things like that, and then like those are like they phantom tax the tea. Phantom tax is like a new like brain rot thing, whereas so
what's a brain rot?
Brain rot is like, have you heard like the words like skibbity or like I don't know any other brain rot words. No. But they're words that like kids who are like 3 and up have been using, like 3 through like 11 or so, and it's kind of like these just like really weird random words that you've never heard of before. Okay. And so it's like how they talk now. It's like, oh, the Skibbity Ohio, whatever.
Wow, I don't even know what that means.
I don't really know what that means either. That's a question we all ask ourselves.
But you are thinking, it is amazing the power of fashion. Yeah.
So I think one of the things I decided is that, like, if you can get, one of my things is that educate via merch is, like, educating people, because, like, if you see something, like, on a t-shirt or on a bracelet, like, if you want to say, let it begin here, like, oh, let it begin here, what does that mean? Like, what is, like, let what begin here? And I think that kind of pulling the thread is very important in learning about history, and I think that's what brings, like, all people who love history into it.
So your merchandise is available on your website,
yes.
Right? And so, are you thinking about getting it in stores or around?
Yes. So we've been working.
You should get it in the gift shop there.
Yeah, we've been working with a couple places, possibly the Lexington Historical Society, who we're very close with, and the Concord Museum, and Worcester as well. So places like that, historical places, and yeah.
We need to get some. We talk about when we speak with the students about the United States Constitution is the power of the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
And one of those is the First Amendment, which is about a petition, you know, and getting people to sign and getting people to know about it. And then you call the press. Press is a big part. Yeah. Of course, now you can do that on social media too. Yeah. We need to get Taylor Swift to wear one of your shirts. That would help, wouldn't it?
That would definitely help.
How do we get to Taylor Swift?
Well, I do have a very big theory about Taylor Swift's new album, and she's actually...
Is this the poetry album?
Yes.
My daughter just played a song for me, and she really liked it. I write poetry, so because this reminds me of you, Mom.
So this is the Tortured Poets Department, and it's called the Tortured Poets Department, her new album. The Tortured Poets.
Tortured Poets
Department.
That's her album?
That's what it's called.
Okay. I'm not really with it. Okay,
that's the new album.
Tortured Poets album. Doesn't fall off the...
Tortured Poets Department?
That's hard to say. Say that fast 5 times.
Tortured Poets Department.
I can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's hard. But Tortured Poets Department is her new album, and I have a whole entire theory on my website, which you can find in the blog section, about how it's actually about the American Revolution, because the 2 boyfriends it's supposed to be about, Maddie Healy and Joe Alwyn, are British. She's American. She literally has a song called So Long London.
Oh, that's right.
And then...
That's the one Juliet played for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then it also came out on April 19th, which is a date that may sound familiar.
She doesn't even know what she's doing.
Exactly. We hope she does. And there's so many other Easter eggs within here about like, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, about like the small town militias.
Uh-huh.
I like to think that one's about the American Revolution.
That's great. That's very creative. That's really cool.
I'm a big Taylor Swift fan.
Okay, well, we're going to make this happen. We're like 5 degrees of separation. It's what, 6 degrees of separation, whatever it is.
Yeah.
6, 7, 5. Yeah. Well, we need to get Taylor Swift. Which T-shirt would you have Taylor Swift wear?
Which T-shirt? Well, she's got to get her own T-shirt. I mean, I got to design one for her.
Oh, okay. You're gonna make a specific one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Let It Begin Here is kind
Let
of.
It Begin Here could be. I don't know. There's a lot of good Taylor Swift lyrics, which could be.
Well, so what are other quotes that you would put? You would have to give her like a Lexington quote, right? To kind of.
I could, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite.
So what Lexington quote would you give?
My favorite quote is actually comes with a story from the night before with When Paul Revere Rode. So Dolly Hancock, John Hancock's fiance, that night she catches wind that the redcoats are coming. Like, oh no, oh wait, my dad's in Boston. I gotta go get my dad. And then she tells John. John's like, no, it's too dangerous. You're a woman. You cannot at all. Don't you even dare. And then she said, recollect, Mr. Hancock, I am not under your control yet. Told him off, and then went to go get her dad in Boston.
Okay, tell that story again. That's amazing. Okay, so what's her name?
Dolly Hancock.
Dolly Hancock wanted to go get her father. Yes. And Paul Revere said, no, darling, too dangerous, right? And she said what?
And then she said, recollect, Mr. Hancock, I am not under your control yet.
Recollect, I am not under your... Recollect.
Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Hancock. This is Hancock's fiance.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not under your control yet?
Yes.
That is great.
Yes, that's probably like one of my favorite quotes. That's like one of my favorite Lexington quotes. Is that. So I think
that she gets her father.
Yes.
We'll have to work on what we want on Taylor's, but we would want it to kind of all power back to shine back to Lexington 250, right?
Yeah. Because that's like a women's history thing, and she's definitely like with The Man, and so many other of her songs are very much like feminist anthems, which I think is cool.
And Goodbye London.
Yeah.
Did she say Goodbye London?
So Long London.
So Long London. There you go. Well, we need to get her to the event.
We do.
You memorized all of Hamilton?
In first grade, yeah.
Do you remember any of it?
Oh yeah, I remember we actually did it in English class like a couple months ago. So, and I got to write about it. It was really cool because I didn't need to, like, we have to cite evidence and stuff. I didn't ever need to go back and flip through the script. I just knew it.
So, do you want to sing your favorite song?
The issue is, I don't know what my favorite song is.
Okay, I love it when the king comes out.
What
does he say? He
King
says,
George. You say.
What does he say?
You'll be back.
Yeah, you'll be back. That was a fun one.
That's a fun one. There's so many.
You don't have to do the whole song.
There's so many good ones. I don't know.
Do you want to do anything? You don't have to do anything at all. But I thought if that was something fun for you.
I don't know.
Juliet memorized only the first few lines, but popular. I want to be popular.
That song, that's like incredibly popular on TikTok.
Is it right?
It's the only reason why I know it. But like, yeah.
She was only about 8 when she was doing it, so it was really cute. She had seen whatever that is, The Wicked.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you like to talk about?
So yeah, my website is trying to get kids into history, and like I feel like if you don't make it accessible for people, then like you're never gonna get them to learn about it. Like if you don't make things easy for them and you want them to do it, like I just think you're just kind of asking, and they don't need to do it, right? Like no one's saying in order for you to be a true Lexingtonian, and you need to be a true Lexingtonian, you need to learn everything about Lexington's history. Like no one's saying that, but at the same time, it's good to know about like where we came from, because I think, as I said before, Lexington's a very diverse community, and the one thing that I think is very special about Lexington is that we all can like bond over that, like it happened here, let it begin here. Like
I think that's the tricky. We work on this a lot at Constituting America. How do you make the Constitution applicable to someone today? I mean, how can you make them appreciate it?
Yeah.
So with what took place there with how the community came together, what would be the one aspect that gelled the community that is worthy of exceptionalism?
Nowadays or 1775?
In 1775, that you could correlate to today, that you would want everyone to appreciate today.
I'd want everyone to appreciate kind of, again, the courage that everyone had back then. I think definitely kind of, yeah, I think it's the courage and kind of the fact that, like, we're in it together. Like, just because, like, Bob is not a big fan of Joey, like, doesn't mean that you guys aren't in the same community. Like, you guys need to, like, when we need to, we can all come together and we can all make something happen.
So finding the common ground.
Finding common ground.
Right. So that would be interesting to teach. The lesson from this is they came together for a common purpose.
Yeah.
So what's the common purpose that brings us all together?
The common purpose is that we're sick of getting taxed. Okay? Like, we're Kyson and Phantom's taxing us over there. And yeah, so we're just kind of like, okay, we're kind of done. Let's figure out how to make this happen.
So it all comes full circles back to taxes.
It does.
You know, when I was, what's a phantom tax? What do you mean by
phantom tax? Is so there's a Twitch streamer named Kai Sanat, and Kai Sanat, like, I think he roommates with this guy named Phantom. I'm not sure Phantom's last name, but he roommates with Phantom, and like, whenever he would, like, order DoorDash, he'd come in and take some food, and that's been deemed as the phantom tax. That's another brain rot word. That's like a Gen Alpha.
Brain rock or rot?
Rot.
Brain rot. Brain, there you go. I can't say that either. Brain rot word is phantom tax.
Phantom.
Phantom.
There's no T.
Phantom.
Yeah.
How do you spell it then?
Phanum.
Is this a new word?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
There's a lot of new words with Gen Alpha that we learn every day.
Okay, I'm going to feel so hip when this is over. All right, so anyway, so we're back to taxes in a way. Yeah.
So we're back to taxes and kind of everything, because we were, the Redcoats and the, like, Patriots, colonists were all together. We were in this together during the French and Indian 7 Years' War. Like, we just were friends. And now we're kind of like, hey, like, we don't agree on now.
Well, Americans were so independent. We were over here all by ourselves. The colonists, not Americans yet, but colonists, they were independent. They didn't have the king over here hovering, you know, so everyone, you know, grew their own gardens and had their own orchards and spun their own yarn and had their lives. So it was sort of, and then you kind of were cut to a couple of generations already, and they're like, wait, who's this over there that's telling us what to do?
Yeah, like, no taxation without representation was what they were also mad about. Like, you're taxing us, but you're not even giving us a voice.
Yes.
Like, come on.
So having a voice.
Yes.
That's still something everybody wants today. So it'd be interesting to find a voice in a community spirit, like at the tavern. It'd be fun to have a tavern. I live in a small town in Texas. I have a ranch up there, and where I vote is an old 1800s church. It's about the size of this, but they have like community center where they play bingo or whatever.
Cool.
Like, getting the community out to actually come together and do something is really important. And sacred ground, a big picnic if they would even let you.
Like, a lot of things, we have a ton of community events. Like, today, there's so many community events. There is a Asian American Pacific Islander 5K. It's known to be one of the best 5Ks in the state. And then we also have Holi Festival of Colors, which is a Indian holiday where you can throw colors, but everyone comes to it. And I think that's, like, it's really great when the Lexington community comes together and, like, we kind of celebrate who we are now and who we are then.
Yes, Lexington community, that's a real focus. Okay, well, we're wrapping this up, but I want to make sure we have talked about everything you would like to talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
So Lexington 250, I started it because I saw kids not getting into history. People thought Paul Revere was a myth. William Dawes was not. No one knew William Dawes' name. So I decided Paul Revere was real. Don't forget William Dawes. All these other t-shirts that made it fun. I want the Lexington community to know what happened there, and I want us to all, in a time that we're all so separated and we all feel so alone, I want us to unite over something. And I think the 250th anniversary is the best time for us to do this.
Well, not only for Lexington, but for the country.
For the country, yeah. Right. But I think it all starts with, like, community by community.
It spreads out, yes. Well, okay, that's a fabulous goal. And you're so impressive. You're 8th grade? How old are you again?
I'm 14.
14. What an impressive, exceptional young woman you are. You're just truly exceptional. You're on a pillar of an example of someone that's trying to make a difference for their country and for their community, and that's really terrific. So we're going to work on the Taylor Swift, and then also we're going to work on a broader reach for people to really understand what happened at Lexington.
Yeah.
Because and you learn about it, Lexington, Concord, but you don't really know.
It's one sentence, whereas it can really be like books. It could be books and books and books. Like, also using historical places like as hangout spots, like just like hanging out, like my friends and I, like Buckman Tavern's a historical museum, but upstairs they always have exhibits, and some of the exhibits can be interactive. Like there's a dress up part, and there's like you can make your own pageant and build blocks. Like my friends and I the other weekend were just like building blocks and talking about history, and I just think that's like, I think spreading kind of hanging out in historical places and like understanding like what happened here is just like an important thing to do. And it doesn't have to be like school. Like school has not been how people learn. Like no one really liked school, right? But if we make it fun and we draw it out of school, I think there's an opportunity for us to all come together.
And last question, if there's someone, you know, when I speak with someone like you remind me of myself, where I just feel so connected to the women of history. And I've written a book about 12 exceptional women. I've written a Broadway show about Belva Lockwood. Is there one particular founding mother or someone from Lexington or any historical woman with which you put on a pillar?
Wow, so this week, actually, there's a new monument in town called Something is Being Done, because one of the quotes from Abigail Harrington, I believe, is, "Jonathan, the regulars are out, something must be done." And I think, so there's a new monument with over 20 different women and girls from Lexington who all kind of had a revolutionary spirit. So I've learned a lot about new women in the past week or so. But one of the ones that has to stand out for me is actually a girl named Elizabeth Clark, and she was Jonas Clark's daughter, who was the reverend at the time. And the reason why we know so much about the revolution is because she actually wrote everything down that happened in her diary. Because Jonas Clark, he's known to have a great diary, but his diary consisted of that day of the weather and the Battle of Lexington happened, and that's it.
Oh.
So she actually wrote down everything that happened, which has been great for historians.
And what was her name?
Elizabeth Clark.
Elizabeth Clark. And is there a book about this?
There is not, but I am hoping to write one.
There you go. That would be great.
Yeah,
where's her diary?
Her diary is, I think it's with the Lexington Historical Society. So and she actually has many letters to like her family members recalling the day, and she actually lived in that house her whole entire life. She never moved out.
Wow. Okay. Well, that would be fabulous. Okay. Well, we'll do our next interview when you have the book published.
For sure.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yay.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.